He thought the rain would wash the night clean, until he saw a van slow down on a dark interstate road. The door flew open, and a tiny golden retriever puppy was thrown into the storm like discarded cargo. The van sped away. Inside, the mother dog fought against her restraints, her cries lost in the rain. The puppy lay still, shaking, barely breathing. From across the road, a retired veteran stopped walking. He didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. He stepped into the rain straight toward danger. What he uncovered that night wasn't just cruelty, but a trafficking operation that had crossed state lines for years. This is the story of a man who refused to look away. Where are you watching from today? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Rain poured relentlessly over a deserted stretch of interstate highway, turning asphalt into a mirror of blurred lights and shadows. The sky hung low and heavy, as if the night itself were pressing down on everything beneath it. The van did not slow. Its rear doors burst open for less than a second, just long enough for something small and golden to be thrown violently into the rain. The body hit the ground hard, rolled once, then slid to a stop near the edge of the road. The van sped on, its red taillights dissolving into the storm. The puppy did not cry out at first. His body was too shocked, too weak for sound. He lay curled on his side, thin legs drawn inward, ribs faintly visible beneath soaked, matted, golden fur. He could not have been more than 8 weeks old. His ears were still too large for his head, his paws oversized and clumsy, as if he had not yet grown into them. Water ran into his open mouth as he struggled to breathe. Only then did a sound escape him. A faint, broken whimper that was almost immediately swallowed by the rain and the rush of passing wind. Behind the van, still visible for a brief, cruel moment, another shape fought violently against thick ropes. The golden retriever mother was full grown, her once beautiful coat dragged down by mud and rain, her body leaner than it should have been. The ropes cut deep into the fur around her chest and hind legs, binding her to the metal frame inside the vehicle. Her eyes were wide, wild, and unmistakably aware. She threw herself forward with everything she had, claws scraping uselessly against steel. Her mouth opened in a scream that carried no words, only panic and grief. She did not look at the road. She looked only at the small, broken shape left behind. When the van finally vanished into the storm, her body collapsed against the ropes. The puppy lay motionless. Headlights swept across the road a few minutes later, then passed. Another car followed, then another. None slowed, none stopped. Water pooled beneath the puppy's chest, rising and falling with each shallow breath. His eyes fluttered open briefly, dark and glassy, unfocused. He did not understand where his mother was. He only knew that everything hurt, and that the cold was creeping deeper into his bones. Farther down the road, beneath a flickering streetlight, an old man had stopped walking. His name was Jack Miller. At 60 years old, Jack stood with a posture shaped by decades of hard living, slightly hunched shoulders, a stiffness in his movements that betrayed old injuries. His face was deeply lined, carved by time and weather rather than vanity. A gray beard covered his jaw, uneven and untrimmed, and rain clung to it in thin streams. His hair, once dark, was now mostly silver, plastered to his scalp beneath a worn baseball cap. Jack's coat was old army surplus, faded green, the fabric stiff from age and repeated repairs. His boots were heavy and scuffed, their soles worn thin at the edges. He looked like a man the world had used and then forgotten. He was a veteran. Years ago, war had taught Jack how to recognize certain sounds even in chaos. A weapon being loaded, a scream breaking apart, a body hitting the ground when it should not have. And now, through the rain, he heard something that did not belong. Jack froze. His first instinct was to keep moving. That instinct had guided him for years. Don't look too long. Don't get involved. Survival had taught him that caring too much always came at a cost, but his feet refused to obey. The sound came again, so weak it barely existed. A thin cry, uneven, desperate. Jack turned slowly, rain soaking through his coat, water dripping from the brim of his cap into tired eyes that had seen too much already. He followed the sound toward the edge of the road. Then he saw the puppy. Something tightened painfully in his chest. Jack had not planned on saving anyone that night. His life was small now, reduced to routines that kept him fed and out of trouble. He lived alone in a sagging wooden house a few miles from the highway, surviving on a modest veteran's pension and occasional odd jobs. He spoke little to neighbors. People described him as quiet, distant, but not unkind. Loss had shaped him. Years earlier, a single moment of hesitation overseas had cost someone else their life. That memory never left him. It followed him into sleep, into silence, into every choice that required courage. Jack stood in the rain, staring at the trembling puppy, and felt the old conflict rise again. If he stepped closer, things would change. If he walked away, the night would erase the evidence of his choice. The puppy tried to lift his head, failed. His body shook violently, not from fear, but from exhaustion and cold. His mouth opened again, but no sound came this time. Jack took one step forward. In the distance, unseen but not silent, the golden retriever mother strained once more against her restraints. Her body trembled as she pressed her head against the metal floor of the van, as if willing herself back through time. She did not know the man on the road. She did not know his name or his past. She only knew that her puppy was no longer with her. Rain hammered down, relentless and indifferent. Jack stood between the light and the dark, his boots filling with water, his hands slowly clenching into fists. The storm blurred his vision, but not the memory forming behind his eyes. He leaned forward, breath catching, and listened one last time to the sound coming from the road. Then, without knowing why or whether he was strong enough to face what followed, he moved. Jack Miller did not think. He moved. He shrugged out of his army coat and wrapped it around the trembling body at his feet, his hands steady despite the cold biting into his fingers. The puppy was lighter than he should have been, too light. Jack lifted him carefully, feeling the rapid flutter of a heart that seemed unsure whether it wanted to keep going. The rain soaked through Jack's shirt almost instantly, but he barely noticed. His focus narrowed to the small, fragile weight against his chest. The puppy smelled of wet fur, oil, and fear. Jack took one step back from the road, then another, angling his body to shield the puppy from passing headlights. He had learned long ago how to make himself small, how to stand between danger and someone weaker. The instinct had never left him. It had only been buried. A sound came from the bushes behind the guardrail. Jack turned slowly. The golden retriever mother emerged on trembling legs, her movements cautious, almost reverent. She was tall for her breed but thin, her once luxurious coat dulled and torn in places, patches of fur missing where ropes had burned into skin. Fresh abrasions marked her chest and thighs. Her muzzle was flecked with mud, her whiskers clumped together by rain. She stopped several feet away, her head lowered, not in submission, not in fear, but in something closer to recognition. Her dark eyes locked onto the bundle in Jack's arms. Her body shook, though not from cold alone. She took a step forward. Jack stiffened, instinctively shifting his stance. He had faced animals in the wild before, wounded ones with nothing left to lose. But this dog did not bare her teeth. She did not growl. She sank slowly to her front legs, lowering her chest to the wet ground. It looked like kneeling. A sound escaped her throat, not a bark, not a whine, but a broken, breathless noise that seemed pulled from deep inside her chest. Her eyes never left the puppy. Jack swallowed hard. He had seen men beg like that once, strong men reduced by loss to something raw and unguarded. The memory twisted painfully in his gut. "It's okay," he said, without realizing he was speaking. His voice came out rough, unused. "I've got him." The dog did not move closer. She only waited. Jack adjusted his grip on the puppy. Up close, he could see how young he was, barely more than a handful of weeks, his nails still soft, his ears flopping uselessly to the sides. One hind leg twitched weakly, then went still. Jack felt anger bloom, slow and dangerous. This wasn't abandonment. This was disposal. He looked back toward the road, half expecting the van to reappear, to come roaring back and demand what it had thrown away. But the highway remained empty, rain swallowing distance and sound. Jack made his decision. "My place isn't far," he said quietly, though he knew the dog could not understand the words. "You can follow, or not, but I'm not leaving him here." He turned away from the road and began walking. For several seconds there was only the sound of rain and Jack's boots on gravel. Then softly, another set of steps joined his own. The dog followed at a careful distance, limping slightly on her right hind leg. Jack's house sat back from the road, hidden among trees that had long outlived their usefulness as shelter. The wooden structure leaned subtly to one side, its paint long since surrendered to weather and neglect. Light spilled from a single window, the kitchen casting a weak yellow glow into the night. Jack fumbled with the lock, balancing the puppy with one arm while forcing numb fingers to cooperate. The door creaked open. Warmth rushed out. Jack stepped inside and kicked the door shut behind him. The dog hesitated at the threshold, rainwater pooling around her paws. She looked around, ears twitching, alert to every sound. "You're safe," Jack said again, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. She crossed the threshold. Jack set the puppy down on the kitchen table, clearing aside old mail and a chipped mug. He wrapped the puppy in a towel, rubbing gently to coax warmth back into stiff muscles. The puppy stirred, releasing a weak, breathy sound that might have been a sigh. The mother pressed close, watching every movement. When Jack paused, she nudged the towel with her nose, then looked up at him, eyes sharp and pleading. Jack nodded once. "I know." He filled a bowl with warm water and set it near the table. The dog drank greedily but neatly, stopping often to look back at her puppy, as if afraid he might vanish again. As Jack worked, he noticed details others might have missed. The faint circular scar behind the dog's ear, where a tracking chip had once been removed. The way she flinched at the sound of a passing truck outside. The way she placed her body between the puppy and the door without conscious thought. This wasn't her first time being afraid. Jack's jaw tightened. He moved to the sink, rinsing his hands, and caught sight of himself in the dark window. For a moment, he barely recognized the man staring back. He looked older tonight, more tired, or maybe more awake. Helping them would cost him. He knew that. Food, vet bills, attention he didn't usually attract. Trouble. Jack shut off the tap. Behind him, the puppy let out a small, thin cry, not from pain, but from awareness. The mother immediately pressed closer, her body curling protectively around him. Jack watched them, something heavy and unfamiliar settling into his chest. He pulled a chair closer to the table and sat down, elbows on his knees, rainwater dripping onto the floor. "I won't let them take you back," he said softly, not sure whether he was promising the dogs or himself. Outside, the storm showed no sign of stopping. Morning arrived slowly, as if the storm had exhausted even the sky. Rain softened into a steady drizzle, tapping against the roof of Jack Miller's house with a dull, persistent rhythm. Jack had not slept. He sat at the small kitchen table, elbows resting on scarred wood, watching the two shapes on the floor. The puppy lay wrapped in a clean towel inside a shallow cardboard box padded with old flannel shirts. His breathing was steadier now, though still shallow. His chest rose and fell in uneven intervals, as if each breath had to be negotiated with his body. The mother lay beside him, curled protectively, her spine forming a living wall. One paw rested against the edge of the box. Her head was up, eyes alert, tracking Jack's movements without hostility, only vigilance. Jack moved quietly. Years of living alone had taught him how to exist without noise. He heated water on the stove and poured it into a battered metal bowl, letting it cool before setting it near the dog. She drank carefully this time, no longer frantic, but she did not turn her back on the puppy for even a second. Jack knelt down, studying her more closely in daylight. She was younger than he had first thought, maybe 4 years old. Strong bones beneath the thinness. Her golden coat, once thick and glossy, was dulled and patchy, rubbed raw in places where restraints had bitten deep. Near her left shoulder blade, Jack noticed a faint scar, round and pale, the skin slightly sunken. He had seen that mark before. Jack gently parted the fur with his fingers. The dog stiffened, but did not pull away. "Someone took your chip out," he murmured. The realization settled heavily in his chest. Microchips were not removed by accident. It took tools, time, intention. Jack straightened slowly. The puppy whimpered, a weak sound, and the mother immediately lowered her head, touching noses with him. Her body relaxed only after he stilled again. Jack stood and walked to the sink, bracing his hands against the counter. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened window-lined face, tired eyes, jaw clenched too tightly. This wasn't just cruelty, it was organized. Later that morning, Jack pulled on his coat and boots and stepped back into the damp air. He hated asking questions. It meant talking to people, Opening doors he preferred to keep shut. But some instincts were louder than comfort. He drove his old pickup into town, windshield wipers squeaking in protest. The town itself was small one main road, a gas station, a diner, and a veterinary clinic that had been there longer than most of the residents. The clinic sat on the corner, its faded sign swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, the smell of antiseptic and wet fur hit him immediately. Behind the counter stood Sarah Collins, the town's veterinarian. She was in her early 40s, tall and lean, with auburn hair pulled into a loose braid that slipped over one shoulder. Her skin was pale, freckled lightly across her nose, and her eyes sharp gray mist very little. Years of dealing with frightened animals and stubborn owners had given her a calm, direct manner. People trusted her because she didn't waste words. She looked up as Jack entered. "Jack Miller," she said. "Haven't seen you in a while." "Was hoping you wouldn't," Jack replied dryly. A corner of her mouth twitched. "That bad?" Jack didn't sit. He rested his hands on the counter, fingers curling slightly. "Found a dog last night. 2, actually. Golden retrievers." Sarah's expression shifted subtle, but Jack caught it. "Puppy?" "Yes." "Injured?" "Exhausted, cold, alive." She nodded once. "And the other?" "The mother." Jack hesitated. Her chip was removed. Sarah went very still. She reached under the counter and pulled out a clipboard, flipping to a page already worn thin. "You're not the first to say that," she said quietly. "I've seen 3 cases this year. Same breed type, same scars." Jack felt a familiar chill, the kind that came not from cold, but recognition. "Where do they go?" he asked. Sarah exhaled slowly. "Across state lines, breeders who don't ask questions, buyers who don't want paperwork. It's easier to steal than raise." Jack nodded. He already knew that. War had taught him how systems like that survived, by counting on silence. "Be careful," Sarah added, meeting his eyes. "People who do this don't like loose ends." Jack straightened. "Neither do I." When he returned home, the dogs were exactly where he had left them. The puppy was awake now, eyes half open, unfocused, but searching. When Jack knelt, the tiny head turned toward him, a soft sound escaping his throat. Not fear, not pain. Recognition. Jack felt something twist in his chest. He reached out slowly. The puppy's paw, small, warm, impossibly light, closed weakly around his finger. Behind him, the mother watched, her body tense but not intervening. After a moment, she lowered herself back down, trust earned inch by inch. Jack sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, the puppy's warmth seeping into his bones. His house felt different now, smaller, fuller. Outside, a truck passed on the road, engine growling low. The mother lifted her head instantly, ears flattening, eyes sharp with fear. Jack followed her gaze. Someone had been here before, and if Jack didn't move carefully, they might come back. He looked down at the puppy in his hands, then at the mother guarding him with everything she had left. "I won't let them take you," Jack said quietly. This time, he meant it. The rain returned after dark, heavier than before, drumming against the roof as if testing its limits. Wind pushed sheets of water sideways, rattling the loose boards along the porch. Jack Miller stood at the kitchen window, watching the road beyond the trees disappear and reappear under the sweep of passing light. He had learned to read nights like this. Bad weather made people careless or bold. The mother dog stirred before Jack heard the engine. Her head snapped up, ears flattening, body going rigid in a single, fluid motion. A low sound vibrated in her chest, not a growl, but a warning meant only for him. Jack followed her gaze. Headlights moved slowly along the road, far too slowly for someone just passing through. The pickup was not local. Jack knew every truck that belonged in this area, knew their dents and exhaust sounds the way some men knew faces. This one was dark, lifted higher than necessary. Its lights dimmed just enough to avoid attention. It rolled past the turn to his driveway, then stopped. Jack's pulse quickened, calm settling over him the way it used to before contact. "Basement," he whispered. The mother hesitated only a second. Jack lifted the puppy, now wrapped in a thicker blanket, and carried him toward the back of the house. The basement door was narrow, hidden behind a shelf stacked with old jars and rusted tools. Jack moved the shelf aside with practiced efficiency. The stairs creaked as they descended. The basement smelled of damp earth and old wood. A single bulb cast a weak circle of light over stacked boxes and a narrow cot. Jack set the puppy down gently, then looked at the mother. "Stay," he said quietly. She stepped between the puppy and the stairs. Her body curved protectively, eyes never leaving Jack's face. He closed the door softly and slid the shelf back into place. Upstairs, the engine cut. Jack moved to the front door and killed the kitchen light, leaving the house in darkness. He stood just inside, one hand resting against the frame, the other loosely clenched. He did not own a gun. He had chosen long ago not to keep one, but he still knew how to make himself look like trouble. A knock came, slow, deliberate. Jack did not answer. Another knock followed, harder this time. "Evening," a man's voice called out. Smooth, too smooth. "Truck trouble. Thought I'd see if anyone was home." Jack waited. Silence could be a weapon if used right. The door handle jiggled once. Jack stepped forward, opening the door just enough for rain and light to spill inside. The man on the porch was tall and broad-shouldered, his posture loose but ready. He wore a dark jacket slicked with rain, hood pushed back to reveal a shaved head and a face cut with sharp angles. A scar ran from his left eyebrow into his hairline, pale against weathered skin. His eyes were light, watchful, and completely unbothered by Jack's presence. Behind him stood another man, shorter, heavier, with a thick beard and hands shoved deep into his pockets. He avoided Jack's eyes, scanning the yard instead. "Name's Tom Keller," the first man said easily. "We're looking for a dog." Jack met his gaze without blinking. "Can't help you," Tom smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Funny thing is, we think you can." Rain streamed down the porch roof between them. Jack felt the old awareness sharpen angles, distances, exits. "You're on private property," Jack said. "I suggest you leave." Tom leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't strike me as stupid, Jack. You're former military, right? Army, seen things. You know how this works. Something went missing. We retrieve it. No harm done." The second man shifted behind him, boots scraping wood. Jack felt the echo of other nights' mud, darkness, waiting for movement that meant everything had gone wrong. "I don't have your dog," Jack said evenly. Tom's eyes flicked past him, toward the dark interior of the house. "Shame, because mistakes tend to get corrected. Jack stepped fully into the doorway, blocking the view. "I won't make this easy for you." For a long moment, the rain was the only sound. Then Tom straightened. "We'll be in touch." He turned, signaling the other man, and both walked back toward the truck. The engine roared to life, tires throwing mud as they pulled away. Jack closed the door slowly and locked it. His hands were shaking now, just slightly. He leaned his forehead against the wood, breathing through the surge of memory and adrenaline. Downstairs, the puppy whimpered. Jack moved quickly, uncovering the basement door and descending the steps. The mother relaxed only when she saw him, pressing her nose briefly against his leg before returning to the puppy. Jack knelt, resting his hand against the floor, grounding himself. "They know," he murmured, "but so do I." The rain continued to fall, relentless and unforgiving. Jack sat with them through the night, listening, watching, knowing the line had been crossed. And there was no going back. The rain did not ease. It thickened, falling in heavy sheets that blurred the yard into a moving wall of gray. Jack Miller stood near the front window, lights off, listening to the sound of tires grinding slowly over wet gravel. They were back. This time, they did not stop on the road. The pickup rolled straight into the yard, headlights cutting through rain and striking the house full on, pinning it in light. The engine idled low and steady, confident. A second vehicle followed, an older sedan, paint dull, plates smeared with mud. Jack felt the familiar tightening behind his ribs. His breathing slowed, controlled. Panic had no place here. From the basement came a muffled sound, the puppy shifting, unsettled by vibrations he did not understand. The mother dog let out a short, sharp bark, then fell silent. Jack could picture her perfectly, body coiled, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the stairs. He moved away from the window and positioned himself near the front door. The first knock came without hesitation. Hard, final. Jack did not answer. The door shook as a shoulder slammed into it once, testing the frame. Rainwater spilled inside through the seams. "Last chance," Tom Keller's voice came through the door, louder now, stripped of pretense. "We know they're here." Jack opened the door before they could try again. Rain rushed in, soaking the floor. Tom stood inches away, water streaming down his shaved head, scar bright against flushed skin. Behind him were three others this time. One was the heavy-set man from before, beard dripping, eyes flat. Another was younger, early 20s, maybe thin and nervous, his hood pulled tight, hands shaking despite his attempt to hide it. The third man stood apart, tall and wiry, with a narrow face and hollow cheeks. His dark hair hung wet against his temples, and his eyes never stopped moving. Jack registered them all in a heartbeat. "You made a mistake," Tom said calmly. "We don't usually give second chances." Jack said nothing. He stood square in the doorway, boots planted, shoulders broad despite age. Rain plastered his hair flat, soaked his shirt through, but he did not move aside. Tom nodded to the wiry man. "Search." They pushed past Jack. The younger one hesitated, glancing at Jack's face, then at the darkness of the house. Something flickered in his expression, fear, maybe guilt, but it passed quickly as he followed orders. Jack turned, tracking their movements. Drawers were yanked open. A chair scraped loudly across the floor. Cabinets banged shut. They were thorough, efficient. not the behavior of desperate men, but of practiced ones. The mother dog heard them. She burst up the basement stairs with a sound that was half snarl, half scream. Her body slammed into the door at the top, claws scraping, muscles screaming with effort. When the door finally gave, she surged into the kitchen like a living shield. Tom cursed sharply. "She's here!" The mother placed herself squarely between the men and the stairs, her stance wide, teeth bared now, lips pulled back from gums dark with blood where rope had once cut deep. Rainwater and sweat slicked her coat, but she did not retreat. Behind her, from the open basement door, the puppy's thin cry rose, small, terrified, alive. Jack moved without thinking. He stepped in front of the dog. "Stop," he said, his voice loud enough to cut through the storm and the chaos inside the house. The wiry man lifted something from his jacket, a knife, short and utilitarian. The heavy-set man reached for Jack's shoulder. Jack struck first. His elbow connected with the man's jaw, a sharp, practiced motion born of memory rather than thought. The man went down hard, crashing into the table. The younger one froze, eyes wide, breath caught. Tom drew back a step, surprise flickering across his face before anger took its place. "You really want to die over a dog?" Tom shouted over the rain hammering the roof. Jack spread his arms slightly, blocking the stairwell completely. The mother pressed close behind him, her body trembling with effort, her breath hot against his back. "Yes," Jack said simply. The word carried no drama, no doubt. Tom's jaw tightened. He lunged forward, grabbing Jack by the collar, slamming him against the wall. Pain flared white behind Jack's eyes, but he did not cry out. He held on, boots sliding against wet wood, fingers digging into Tom's sleeve. The knife flashed. The mother dog hurled herself forward. She struck Tom's side with full force, teeth snapping, driving him off balance. He stumbled, swore, rain-slick boots skidding across the floor. The knife clattered away. The younger man screamed. Outside, thunder cracked so close it shook the windows. Rain poured through the open door, flooding the threshold. The wiry man moved to grab the dog, hands outstretched. Jack shoved him hard. The man fell backward, striking his head against the doorframe with a sickening sound. He collapsed, unmoving. For a moment, everything froze. Breathing, rain, the puppy crying below. Tom wiped blood from his mouth and looked at Jack with something new in his eyes. Not anger, not surprise, but calculation. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Jack stood his ground, blood trickling from his eyebrow, chest heaving, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The mother remained behind him, ready to spring again, even as her legs shook with exhaustion. Somewhere in the distance, faint but unmistakable, a siren began to rise, low, far away, but growing. Then back at Jack. Rain flooded the doorway, washing footprints away as the men retreated into the night. Jack did not move. He stayed where he was, between the stairs and the storm, until the siren grew louder and the puppy's cries softened into uneven breaths behind him. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the rain like a blade through cloth. Blue and red lights flashed against the trees, against the soaked siding of the house, against Jack Miller's hands as he finally lowered them from where he'd been holding the door. His old phone lay open on the kitchen counter, rain-speckled and cracked at one corner. He had pressed the call button earlier, in the seconds after the men fled, his thumb steady, his voice clear when he spoke. He had given names, descriptions, routes, things he remembered how to do. Now the sound of engines and boots filled the yard. Jack turned from the doorway and went down the basement steps 2 at a time. The puppy lay curled against his mother's chest, both of them shaking, not from cold alone now, but from the echo of violence. The mother's flank was heaving, her eyes tracking Jack instantly, alert but no longer wild. A shallow cut marked her shoulder where a knife had grazed fur instead of flesh. Blood darkened the gold. "You're safe," Jack said, kneeling. He didn't rush. He let her see his hands. "It's over." She studied him for a long moment, then lowered her head and nudged the puppy closer to her chest. Permission, Jack exhaled. Footsteps sounded above, heavy and purposeful. A flashlight beam swept down the stairs. "Mr. Miller," a voice called. "Federal Task Force, we're coming down." The man who descended first was Agent Daniel Ruiz, mid-40s, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped black hair already threaded with gray. His face was angular, jaw set hard, eyes alert but not unkind. He moved like someone used to rooms turning dangerous without warning. Behind him came a younger agent and a uniformed state trooper. Ruiz took in the scene in a glance, the dogs, the blood, Jack's bruised face. "You the caller?" Ruiz asked. Jack nodded. They came back, more of them this time. Ruiz crouched, lowering himself to the dog's level without reaching for them. "You did the right thing." Jack's mouth tightened. He had learned long ago that right didn't always mean easy. Outside, rain finally began to taper off, as if exhausted by the night's demands. Radios crackled with updates. Vehicles moved in coordinated patterns. Ruiz stood and spoke quietly into his earpiece. Confirming visual. 2 canines recovered. Scene secured. We have a trail. He turned back to Jack. They didn't get far. Your description matched an ongoing case: interstate theft, illegal breeding, resale. We've been tracking them for months. Jack leaned back against the wall, the tension slowly draining from his limbs, leaving behind a deep, bone-level weariness. "Thought so," he said. Upstairs, another voice called Jack's name, familiar, sharp, with concern. Sarah Collins appeared at the top of the basement stairs moments later, hair hastily tied back, rain jacket half-zipped. Her freckled face tightened when she saw the dogs, then softened as she moved closer. "Jack," she said quietly, "you look terrible." "Feel worse," he replied. Sarah knelt beside the mother dog, examining the cut with careful hands. "It's shallow, painful, but clean." She glanced at the puppy, then back at Jack. "He's going to be okay. Both of them are." The mother watched Sarah closely, tense but still. When Sarah finished, she withdrew her hands slowly, respectful. Outside, a shout went up. Confirmation, Jack guessed. The net closing. Ruiz returned not long after, rainwater dripping from his jacket. "We've got them," he said simply. "All of them. Vehicles, documents, animals in transit. This ends tonight." Jack closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the storm had finally broken. The rain had softened into mist, drifting across the yard like breath. Paperwork came later. Statements, questions. Jack answered them all, his voice steady, his memory precise. Years ago, training had taught him how to compartmentalize, how to recall details under pressure. By dawn, the house was quiet again. Sarah stayed long enough to help clean the wounds and leave supplies. Ruiz shook Jack's hand before he left, grip firm. "You ever need anything," Ruiz said, meaning it. When the last vehicle pulled away, Jack stood alone on the porch. The sky was pale now, streaked with weak morning light. Birds began to test the silence. Inside, the mother dog lay on an old blanket near the stove. The puppy slept against her, one small paw resting on her leg. His breathing was slow, even. Jack sat down on the floor nearby, back against the cabinet. His body ached. His ribs throbbed where he'd been hit. But beneath it all, there was something else, something lighter. He reached out, letting the puppy's paw curl weakly around his finger again. "I don't have much," Jack said quietly, "but if you stay, you won't be alone." The mother lifted her head and met his eyes. After a moment, she shifted, making space an invitation. Jack stayed where he was as the light crept across the room, warming old wood and worn bones alike. The rain was gone. Miracles are not always dramatic or visible. Often they appear through ordinary choices made at the right moment. God works not only through events beyond human control, but through people who decide to act with responsibility and care. In everyday life, each person faces moments where ignoring a problem is easier than addressing it. Choosing to help, even when it is inconvenient or difficult, is how real change begins. This story reflects a simple truth. Protection, responsibility, and compassion still matter in a world that often moves too fast to notice them. If you find value in stories like this, please share it so others can reflect on its message. Leave a comment to share your perspective or where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life inspired stories about choice, consequence, and humanity. May God guide your decisions, protect you and your loved ones, and grant you clarity and strength in daily life.